just to let everyone know that this will be recorded and they'll be able to share with people or people who've missed it. Who I know several people who normally come on. A couple of folks are having other meetings, and so I do know that we've had a few people telling us that they wish they could make it but aren't able to, so they're glad we're recording it. And I just want to, with the recording, just say that you know, the feedback on our meeting, we just want to make sure that we focus not on any personalities, but on our topic tonight. And the topic is technology. And we're really fortunate to be able to look at this technology in depth and have someone to walk us through it. And so we'll introduce that here in just a minute, but I want to mention a couple of housekeeping things. If you haven't been on Zoom before, down hovering at the bottom of the screen, if you're joining us online, you can see some different icons. That there's a chat. You can open the chat box and different features that you can enjoy there, send messages to each other or to the group. I do hear a little bit of feedback. How much of a problem is that for everyone?
I have a little.
Are we able to check on any of that, Adria? Do you know? Can you hear it, Adria?
Yeah, I can hear it.
Yeah, it's an echo.
I wonder if it's my washing machine. Could it be my washing machine? I could turn it off.
Sometimes it's hard to tell what's causing the echo, where it's coming from, which phone. Adria, are you able to tell from the backdrop there where the echo's coming from?
I'm not, but let me try muting everybody and then unmuting you so that we'll see if that works.
Just try to see if we can get rid of that before we get this rolling here.
I think if everybody kind of turns their volume down a little bit, that might help.
Okay.
Turn my volume.
And then let's unmute.
Well, so I guess I can be heard. Okay, I can't tell. I'm not hearing any feedback, that's for sure, or echoing. So I'll assume everything's going well, or you guys will post something in the chat. Just kind of starting over, we're recording tonight. I want to welcome everyone to the call. And we're really glad to have and host this meeting and an in-depth look at the technology. But I wanted to encourage anyone who's calling in, if they have the opportunity to go online through their phone or any other way to access the internet. We do have a video that we're going to show tonight. And you can get a lot more out of our meetings if you do download the Zoom, and it's very easy to download it. I'm not a tech person, and I had a very easy time downloading it and getting into the meetings here. So, however, if you're not able to do that and phone is the only way that works for you, I want to say that for those of you or anyone who couldn't make it tonight, we are recording. So we'll be posting that. And we are working on a website, and it should be on the website soon, but we might have it in the Facebook group before then. So I want to just quickly introduce myself. I'm Monta Welch, and I have been a lifelong activist, actually, but very active in more intense activism for the past 10 years. I've started 3 organizations previous to Take Back Elections, and they're still in operation and they've done some very significant things, certainly in my area. And so they're still functioning, and I'm happy to, have that as something that's bearing fruit today. But I wanted to just say that I'm happy to share with everyone this opportunity to work together with Take Back Elections, and thank you for being interested for the work that we're trying to accomplish. So I will just repeat here that our topic for today is an in-depth look at the Prime 3 voting technology. and publicly owned. Open source is the software for it, and it's off the shelf technology, and we'll be talking in depth about that. We're launching our investigation into the different voting technology and machines, just as we're doing with the different methods of casting votes. We're doing all of that work in one of our small working groups that you can find and hook up with both in our Facebook group and pretty soon when we launch our website, which should be not very long. So that group is the group that's putting on this information tonight is the Casting and Counting Our Votes. And Joanne Scott Woods is the co-chair of that group. And I know that she started activism work earlier before the election issue blew up. She was a dialogue activist with the Maricopa County Police Department. And then she got into the election integrity issues. And she was working with John Brakey on a couple of the lawsuits that he took to the Secretary of State, as well as one that he won to preserve the ballots for at least 22 months after they were stored after any election. So she's been working with Audit AZ, or Arizona, and the Election Integrity Coalition in her area, as well as Americans United for Democracy, Transparency, and Integrity of Arizona, the Election Integrity Team of the Central Chapter of People Demanding Action in Arizona. And during that time, she held numerous educational events in the community. And so she's now working a lot with us here in Take Back Elections, both in the working group, and she's now our national facilitator. So really happy to have her joining us. And so out of one of our small groups, we thought, well, we've got to really vet this technology just like we're vetting the voting methods. And so we thought, you know, we're going to just put all the technology on the table and try to get our heads around what each of them can offer and the pros and cons of everything. And in our last meeting, we talked about voting methods and, you know, how everything has pros and cons. There's pretty much not anything that's going to be 100%, but sometimes as we do these investigations, we might even be able to find ways that the technology would maybe even be responsive to us and could possibly improve. We'll see how that works. But for the meeting tonight, we invited Brent Turner, along with computer scientist Brian Fox and Dr. Juan Gilbert. And Brent is with us today. And I will be speaking later in the week to Dr. Gilbert. He did indicate that he would love to be with us, but wasn't able to, so that I can take some feedback from our meeting, and you know, if there are things that we might not be able to answer, or if there are things we might like to just share with him, thoughts about the technology that might be something useful that we could all contribute. Just like in our last meeting, we ended up contributing some conversation to a meeting of the Green Party. And so before we're all over with this, I might like to ask George Ripley how that went. But right now we're going to stay focused on our technology. And so I would like to introduce Brent Turner, or at least tell you a little bit about Brent. He's a graduate of the Lincoln Law School in San Francisco, has a degree from the University of San Diego in International Legal Studies from Oxford, England. And Mr. Turner is a community activist. His efforts have included volunteer work for the homeless, children's health and education, civil rights, and environmental issues. He was instrumental in the creation of the San Francisco County Voting Systems Task Force and has been a director of communications for the Open Voting Consortium. Brent has been recognized as a groundbreaking activist for sustainability and dedicates himself to local, state, and federal issues. So I appreciate that he's willing to walk us through the Prime 3 technology. And we're going to start that by showing a video that kind of lets you take a look at the technology. I know that pictures are worth 1,000 words, and I think a video is maybe worth 1,000,000 words. So I know this is old hat to Brent, but the rest of us might enjoy this video. If you might put that on, Adria, we can start the video, and it's of the Prime 3 technology. So we'll get a little look at it here before we get going. Adria, do you need to unmute maybe?
Here conducting the with the Open Voting Consortium here conducting the open source elections for Linux World, and we're looking forward to our final tabulation on Thursday. In the meantime, we're just helping the voters go through the process of picking their choice for president, and as well as best of show category. And we just wanted to say hello to the country and the world, and everyone root for open source elections to come into being as quickly as possible. We realize that there's a lot of disinformation in the arena regarding open source elections and the benefits. We just want to prove to the world that it's cheaper, more reliable, more secure, and has a lot of advantages regarding public oversight that proprietary code doesn't have. We're also interested in making sure that people take a look at www.openvoting.org for further information, and we appreciate you coming out. Thank you.
Really, when it comes down to it, we have to make sure we know these things work. And I like the fact that this system
Can you turn the volume up higher?
sign off and gives you a chance to make sure that it hasn't generated something that you don't approve.
I'm Ed Cherlin. I'm a founding member of Open Voting Consortium. What we want is a system that we can rely on because people can examine the code, people can test it for themselves, people can look at the voting record, people can test their own ballots to see that the barcodes we put on them say the same thing as the text that was printed, which is the same thing they voted for on the screen. That everything gets checked and checked again and checked against something else. And no one ever has to trust some part of the system just because the people in charge say so.
Well, what we've been seeing in the community is the activist community where I come from is a lot of people saying, you know, we should just get rid of computers altogether and hand count the paper ballots. So with this particular system, we have a hand countable paper ballot, but we're recognizing the fact, the reality that we're using computerization in our election systems. So our goal is to make them as clean and transparent as possible. And that's where we utilize the open source code.
So what we're doing here is doing the half-hour tabulation of the votes cast in the past half hour. I'm going to take each vote that was, or each ballot that was placed in the ballot box and scan it with this barcode scanner. This is a stock scanner that reads PDF 117. It's something anyone can buy. Everyone uses them. Airlines, FedEx. As I scan each ballot, John McCain, you'll see the numbers on the screen increment to reflect the votes cast on that ballot. If I was to make a mistake and scan a ballot again, the computer will tell me that this ballot has already been counted. This ensures that each ballot is counted once and only once. In addition, there's some security information encoded into this barcode that traces it back to the machine that created it. So that prevents you from printing out 500 of them at home and bringing them in. So each of these ballots is guaranteed to be printed by a machine at this polling station.
There are innumerable holes in election software as it's being done now by proprietary companies, with tests being done by other proprietary companies and nothing being disclosed to the public about what went on.
My name is Alan Decker with the Open Voting Consortium. I'm the president and one of the 3 founders of the consortium. It's not in their interest. A lot of powerful people, you know, all the big heroes of intellectual property don't want to see open source anywhere, and they certainly don't want to see it in the election system. So we're not gonna win them over anytime soon. We're just gonna have to defeat them, basically.
I think that what you would see today that is being demonstrated here would, with the regular proprietary election system, run probably about $4,000 per station. And here we're looking at approximately $400 estimated. So that's about 1/10 of the cost. And certainly the fact that a lot of this is off the shelf makes it easy to just go out and purchase, so you don't get into that whole vendor lock-in issue, and there's some interoperability created as well.
What was that?
Couldn't do write-ins.
That's true. We
Couldn't
wanted to
vote
keep
for
it,
ourselves. Couldn't vote for Ben Stein. You know.
we did try to keep it simple at this point, because when you write in a candidate anyway, you have to write in candidates that have already registered as write-in candidates. It's not as straightforward as I thought either. They don't count all those votes for Superman and capacity.
It's worth noting that the Carter Center will not observe elections in the United States. We don't meet their standards. In large part because every county can have different rules.
Final tabulation will occur in 5 minutes. Anybody interested in seeing the results of Best of Show and the presidential election, please come by the open voting booth. Thank you. For the presidential poll, Barack Obama, 13 votes. John McCain, 2 votes. For the next batch, only the presidential poll, Barack Obama, 63 votes. John McCain, 16 votes. Feel free to applaud any time for any candidate. Barack Obama, 21 votes. John McCain, 5 votes. And with that, we're concluding our first open source code election at Lennox World. Our ballot count 816. We have a winner in the presidential poll, Barack Obama, with 545 votes, over John McCain in second with 135. Best of Show category, we have the winner Canonical with 165 votes, followed by second place Barracuda Networks with 32 votes. This concludes the first open source election at Lennox World. We appreciate all your participation and thank you for voting.
The problem here really is that we're awful trusting if you think about it. This system actually asks you to go through and check whether or not it's registering who you think you voted for and get a printout. So you're responsible for making sure that your ballot says what you think it should say, and then it goes in the box. And boy, for you to know what your ballot said when it went off somewhere. And that's what concerns me. Is I would just like for there to be a way for me to make sure that my participation was what I thought it was.
Okay. So, that gave us a pretty good look at least some of the system. And I want to kind of turn it over to Brent now to just sort of maybe summarize or walk us through whatever he thinks might not have been provided in the little video that we just watched, to kind of give us a description of the system, if there's anything you might like to fill in on that, Brent. And thank you for both joining us and doing, the video there. It's really important, I think, for the public to see how these systems work. And so I just wanted to let you take the floor a minute and talk a little bit if you think there were some things you'd like to add to that demonstration. Obviously, that was in 2008. And I think you mentioned that there may be some changes since then. So I'm going to kind of let you give it a bit of an update or overview at this point with the Prime 3 system, and talk about the open source too, if you want.
Great, Monta, and thanks for having me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You might turn it up just a tiny bit.
Okay.
There, I think that's good.
How we do. Okay. So, well, first of all, again, thanks. Second of all, little disconcerting because I see dead people in the video, which gives you an idea of the passage of time and working on this issue. It's always a bad sign when you see friends that have passed away while working toward a goal. That means too much time is passing. I think that's a bad sign. And of course, we wanted to have these systems deployed nationally and could have had them deployed, 2010, 2012, certainly 2016. So that's a shame. The system that we saw there, it was basically the prototype for the Prime 3. So just to be clear, that's not the Prime 3. That's a prototype of the Deckert design. And you saw Alan Deckert, the fellow that said, we're not going to win anybody over. We just have to defeat them. I always love that particular quote because it's very true. Microsoft is not all of a sudden going to become open source fans. They're going to fight to the death. And so Alan is a great person to be recognized as a pioneer, really the father of this movement. And then we see Dr. Gilbert coming into the picture to create the Prime 3 and to be the person to really create a system that was certified, which is a whole nother level of success on this. So what we saw there was basically the public witnessing the procedure of picking a candidate on their tablet, which, as you saw, was an inexpensive tablet, which, of course, the main focus isn't saving money when it comes to democracy, but it does play into the jurisdiction's ability to afford and accept the system that you're proposing. So interestingly, though they might purport to be sensitive regarding security, they really think that the systems are working pretty well now. And they are a little defensive when you talk about security with the jurisdiction because they think, well, certainly they in their opinion, everything is going fairly well. And they don't like to admit to being overly reliant upon the vendor, which it is our opinion that the vendor has too much control, not only with the software itself, but also with the conducting of the election. So under our suggestion, it actually puts the elections department to work a little bit, whereas currently they're very comfortable handing the keys over to the vendor and waiting for the vendor to tell them the result. And so that's currently the process, is even to the extent where you might recognize that some vendor trained folks get hired on seasonally by county departments, and then and you'll notice that this is so I'm seeing the note here. The vendor is not necessarily Microsoft. When I say the vendor, I mean ES&S, Dominion, Hart InterCivic, or the actual machine sellers. So you've got a combination. I reference Microsoft often, but they are just the biggest lobbyist for intellectual property software. But they act in consort where the machine sellers, your ES&S, Dominion, and Hart InterCivic being the biggest three. So back to the, I'm sorry, go ahead, Manta.
On the vendors, that kind of overlaps into the software and the or the open source question, and it overlaps into, as you were just explaining, the people who can handle programming the machines and interacting with the machines in that kind of way. And some just saying that with your system, do you guys have some type of training that you might make for the elections officials, or other ways to at least assist or accommodate if they don't want to do it, some sort of a way that you can
That is part of the Cavo Navo concept, is that our mission is really to educate the election administration community. And for lack of a better term, I don't think there's any administrators on right now on this call that I'm going to offend, but I know it's recorded. But the idea is to sort of retrain them, because with some different methodology in place, because there is a certain lax nature to their current procedures, in our opinion, and I think there's some shoring up to do all the way around with their procedures. So with this new technology, even though it's very similar to what they're currently using, certainly we would be glad to provide education so that we could have a reconstruction of that environment with security being paramount.
And you mentioned security. So I know that's a big thing with everyone right here in our working group, and just our group in general, and even the public. And I think that what we're just talking about, with the elections officials either being able to do this themselves, and hopefully we can trust them, and or hiring other people if they need that, and providing that service, whatever, with the Cavo and Navo folks helping out in that area. But I think that, if you could talk a little bit about security, there's one little area right there, but there may be some other areas and then things that you want to say that kind of help with the security.
Yes. Well, first of all, I think first and foremost, when analyzing security, it's best to have a criminal mind. So I know, Manta, you have a good criminal mind. So unfortunately, some people don't, which is really interesting. So I've spoken to the highest ranking folks in the technology world, and said to them at the end of the conversation, "Oh, I see your problem. You don't have a criminal mind." Because for some of them, even though they're super smart when it comes to technology, they just can't wrap their head around the fact that if you leave a little tiny pinhole for a criminal, they're going to exploit that little pinhole. So I think what we've done over the past 10, 15 years is analyzed this situation from what would a criminal do if a bad guy was going to try to manipulate an election? What sort of tricks would they use? Well, so that gets into the back and forth that's occurred between hundreds and hundreds of very smart computer scientists, some of which do have good criminal minds, that would pose, okay, well, what about this? What about that? And so a lot of this has been vetted. And at this point, Dr. Gilbert, who unfortunately isn't on the call, I don't know if Brian Fox is on the call right now. I keep sort of checking because people might be calling in that maybe are having trouble getting in or something. But between Brian Fox and Dr. Gilbert, they feel like now the Prime 3 has reached a point where expert hackers will likely shy away from doing a public hack situation because they're not going to be successful. And if they are successful in getting into the system, which Dr. Gilbert doesn't believe they can, but that's another conversation. The idea is with the open source, then it is spotted, first of all, that they're in there, which with a proprietary system you would never know. And then secondly, there's redundancies with the paper ballot printing system and the scanner, so that you would have measures where they would only be able to affect a minimal amount of votes, and that detection piece would come very quickly. So with the right amount of intensifying the criminal the criminal penalties around such shenanigans, you would want it to be very, very difficult to do to begin with. You would want to have the available gain very, very small before detection, and the ratio of detection very high, and then the criminal penalties very high. Now you've got a proper deterrent in place, and that's what we think the prime 3 is. So Dr. Gilbert's position is go ahead and try. You're not going to be able to do it. If you can't do it, you're going to get busted, and you're going down. And so that's his position. Now, usually I've been trained to say every system is vulnerable to a hack. And so I think it's interesting, if not amusing, that Dr. Gilbert, who is a very metered person, not at all like myself, but very metered and very serious. The one time where he comes out of his shell is when we talk about the prime 3 being hacked. He says, you can't do it. Go ahead and try. Let me know how that works for you. So I just want to impart to this group a little bit of confidence that he has that this system, with proper surrounding procedures, is very robust. And that's the idea, because David Dill, who is a known person in this arena of software and voting systems, made the statement in front of Congress that open source is no panacea, and you might sometime come across that statement. And that confused Congress when he said open source is no panacea. Well, nobody ever said it was a panacea. That would be a ridiculous statement that nobody ever made. The fact that he said it to Congress is very telltale. The fact is, no, it's not a panacea. I don't know if there really is anything in life that's a panacea, a silver bullet magic fix that occurs in real life. It is one part of the equation, but it certainly has to be surrounded with a bunch of other procedures, including public participation, to really make it foolproof, so that now you've got a system like we saw demonstrated there, where the voter is voting. The voter is choosing their selections. They're looking at a paper ballot that is perfectly printed, which is not trivial. That's the first step toward a proper election. If you let the voter hand mark their ballot, your election is officially botched. It's over. You lost. You're toast. So the first thing that you have to have is a perfectly printed ballot, because if you have a hand marking, that leads to remakes, and you might be surprised to know the amount of ballots that are remade in dark corners in the middle of the night in election departments. It's horrifying. If you really get into the understanding of the percentage of ballots that are taken from one ballot, and because they were rejected by the scanning system, they're remade without proper oversight. So that's a major flaw in today's
stuffing the ballot box, sort of.
Well, it would just be basically rigging the election right then, because if nobody's watching and you've got a bad person transferring ballots, you know, goodness knows what you're going to have. So the first thing is to get a proper ballot, and that's what the Deckert design provides, is a printed paper ballot. Okay, we're good at that point. Then the next step would be, okay, how are we going to count the ballot? Now, you could, if your election official allows you to hand count that paper ballot, then hand count it. And for goodness sakes, do it with a large crowd with a proper setup, and make sure that that's happening in a community setting where everybody's in agreement on what's happening and such. Now, of course, it's our position, knowing the lay of the land, that jurisdictions aren't going to allow you to do that. There may be a couple in New Hampshire, but aside from that, we haven't seen that in the United States. So not to say it can't happen someday, but today is not someday, today is today. So we're using scanning systems. So the next step is to scan them through. Now, ideally, under the Deckert design system, you would have a big screen at the precinct level, and you would scan them incrementally, singularly, with an announcement attached to each individual ballot. So you would hold the ballot up, and it would say Kucinich on it, and you would announce Kucinich, and you would run the ballot through the scanner, and on the big screen, it would say Kucinich +1. And everybody in the room would know, okay, it said Kucinich on the ballot, and the open source voting scanner is working well. It counted +1 Kucinich. And everybody in the precinct could count along on their own notepad if they wanted, or they could just watch. Then the next ballot, the same, Nixon. It says +1 Nixon. Now, if it's announced Nixon and it pops up Kucinich +2 now, it would say, then all the Nixon people would start booing, and you would know you had a major problem. At that point, you would probably test the scanner one more time, but likely you would just take that scanner, throw it in the trash, with a policeman standing there watching it, because we're going to do a forensic analysis, and you would bring out another scanner and make sure that one was working right. If the whole thing is, been infiltrated by China or the kid down the street, then you would at least have the paper ballots for that precinct, and you would just default to an all-hand count, obviously. And I'm going through worst-case scenarios that we don't anticipate, but at least then you have the paper ballot that's perfect, it's hand countable, and there you have it. So go ahead, Mata.
Your system, it would be able to be set up to print each jurisdiction's ballots right there, because it's programmed somehow into your system, and people would sign in to a voter sign-in sheet, and then they would go to the machine, to your technology, and they would vote on the technology. It would spit out a ballot, this ballot that we're talking about. And before they left the technology, they would have a chance to make sure the ballot was accurate the way they like it.
Yes, they would be asked by the monitor, by the human, did you check your ballot? You checked your ballot, right? Yes. Did it say what you wanted? Yes. Okay, I'll accept it then. I think that's a good question to ask at that moment.
Yeah, and so then it prints it out, and then they're supposed to check it once again before the human accepts their ballot, right?
Yeah.
It checks it both at the, that they basically get asked that question twice. When they're finishing up their ballot on the technology,
yes,
spits it out, and then the human who takes their ballot, or, before they're allowed to put it in a collection box for counting, and that detail would have to be worked out, unless you guys have that worked out, which I would like to ask. But when they do that, they would have to double check it and say, what got printed out is what I thought, it matches what I thought I put into the machine. So it's like they see that the printout is accurate.
Yes,
yeah.
That's a procedural issue. So that would be in our education to the,
right,
to the ballot officials.
Yeah, and so do you guys have in place some kind of a, where do we collect these ballots till we then scan them? Do they go immediately to a scanner? And how long does that process take? Can the scanner kind of do they do individual races? Or just like when we did the hand counting experiment, we had to count race by race. And the ballots have many kinds of things on them, obviously. So how does that work?
Well, depending on what kind of an election you're conducting, you could read as much as you want or nothing at all, depending on the situation. So in other words, if you've got a variety of races, you could pick ones that you want to call out or you could call them all out, or some places might not call any of them out, like Los Angeles County or something where you've got mass volume. There may not be that opportunity for calling out the ballots. Now, this is what we prescribe as best methods: getting the registrars to do what we tell them. That's a whole nother situation. But at least as a default, we know that we're removing the voter intent issues. In a worst case scenario, we're removing the voter intent issues by having a perfectly printed ballot, and we are removing the corporate controls over the vote counting process by having publicly owned software.
Right.
Then at that point, your final check, which we advise, is to have a 100% recount, not a 1%, but 100% audit at the precinct level, so that you run through them by hand again. Now you've got your first count captured by the scan. The scan count is your first count, but again, you can have a 100% hand count audit right there at the precinct. Now at that point, everybody in that room knows that count is correct. There should be no mystery. At that point, you've announced the count, you've seen the scan count on the big screen, you've got like triple redundancy happening here. That should eliminate all question as to whether or not that count has been gamed. And you do have fallback positions just in case on that bizarre circumstance where some wise guy figured out how to break our chains of custody, which we don't believe can happen, but let's just say it happened anyway. Then you would just fall back to the perfectly printed, hand-counted paper ballot, and then you would go into a criminal investigation on what just happened at that small precinct level. And so a bad guy would probably look at this and say, gee, there's not much to gain here, and it seems very risky, which is the exact opposite of what we have today with the systems, where there's a lot of available gain and very little chance of detection.
Yes, so the redundancy is quite considerable, and I know someone here has written in the chat about the scanners. Of course, we will let folks ask questions
Sure.
At the end of this anyway. We're going to open it up eventually to questions, but on the scanners with the open source, one of the questions is, the scanners have to be programmed to read the ballots. Can citizens look at that software too? The software for the scanners.
Absolutely. They should be able to look at everything, and at a certain point before the event, the code is locked down. So in other words, it's not open to manipulation right going into the election, which is a bit of counterintuitive languaging there with open source. I think it is properly defined as open to inspection rather than open to manipulation. Although the idea is that Smarty Pants programmers can continue to upgrade the code, and they like doing that. And they also like spotting bugs, so they can be the smartest person in the room and be the one that saw something irregular or saw something that could be bettered. So that's how you get open source as a more robust code than something that a Microsoft would create, because you have this available brain power in the community that tends to be, in some people's opinion, and I think mine, smarter than a group that you would just put together in a corporate setting and have confined to a one particular room.
Yes.
That
So
makes sense.
yes, and I know too, in terms of the safeguards, I guess, of the off-the-shelf things, as in the demonstration, they were kind of using an off-the-shelf scanner at that point, but nevertheless, with the open source software, in this hopefully all throughout, or these off-the-shelf products when possible, those are kind of other ways to feel a bit more secure, but also can be examined if need be. And one last thing on that off-the-shelf part, because I know some people are concerned that off-the-shelf everything we buy these days off the shelf is kind of already sort of set up or wired to be easily accessed by the internet or, that type of vulnerability built into both counting machines. I believe something like this was discovered by John Brakey up in the Wisconsin recount, but also just, in general with the off-the-shelf products. However, with the redundancies that you've described, I don't know and how we can quickly see if something's going wrong. I'm not sure if that's as big of a problem as it should be. I just want to address that because I know some people have questions about that.
So I think what the question is how do we make sure that when we go to the retail store down the street in Los Angeles, that Sony hasn't been infiltrated so that all their scanners are bogus in some way? I guess that's the question. How can we tell that what we're buying from Good Guys electronics store hasn't been manipulated by the Russians? Is that the question?
No, not really. I think that some people feel that there are ways that people can come by with their cell phone outside of a polling place and access these machines with a certain
Okay, so wireless transmitters and such.
Yes, that kind of thing.
So you would want to make sure certainly that there was none of those capabilities, and everything again is a danger point, and you want to again surround the system by eliminating all those danger points. And certainly you're not alone in thinking that would be dangerous. You would want to make sure that was prohibited. And currently, the current systems, by the way, are not as well managed as they should be. So things like that you would think would be simply disallowed, actually, when you take a closer look, you see in some places that there are those issues. And of course, that's what I was talking about when I said a complete overhaul of what's going on currently. So yes, that would be a failure. That would be an F.
Yeah, and I think that, I just wanted to bring that out because I do know some people think, oh, off the shelf, well, it's already kind of, prone to this. But I feel, in learning more about the Prime 3, more comfortable about that potential because of what you described earlier. When, you can start counting a few ballots, you can make sure early on if something's amiss and get it, corrected and look at whatever you have to do.
Well, you're 100% at the end. If you do 100% hand count audit at the end, it better match that scan count. If it doesn't, you've got a problem. And then of course then the scanner again is confiscated and you've got a problem, and you would go right to the hand count.
So there's plenty of redundancies, I felt. I really liked where you said once you get going, you can kind of start counting a few ballots just to sort of test the system in action right then at the get-go. But also, yes, of course, obviously, the hand count ballots. I mean, Take Back Elections is pretty, strong on wanting to have as 100% if possible. But, we do recognize that the very dense we're looking at ways that even the very dense places can have a great deal of, or some really truly surprise hand counts for certain, districts that just have to be on guard, where there is no manipulation in who's going to be overseeing the hand count, so they really, again, thinking like a criminal, I guess,
Yeah.
to figure out how you can, surprise and really actually surprise a jurisdiction that they're going to be the ones that are going to be audited, and this is talking only about the really dense population or voting areas. So
yes. So what this does is this allows the clerks to have their technology convenience to deal with the issues at hand that we've mentioned previous, disabilities and volume issues, and not just be set up for a hand count per se. But this minute that there's something amiss, you have the hand countable paper ballots right there. You do that way, and then now you still have a proper election occurring.
Right, and they're also what kind of helps you see if there's something amiss.
It does, and it also prevents, it has some security features that an all-hand count could not achieve, which is elimination of ballot stuffing, and that because you've got a random generated number in the barcode. And so if an outside ballot were to try to be entered into the count, that would be rejected, which was featured on that prototype video.
So one question about like truly a vote that people can't identify as your vote. When people say, okay, well, the ballot is, has a barcode, that's the next question or comment that's going to come along is, well, can the voter be identified with that barcode, or are they really truly casting a private ballot? So I would like you to speak to that. And then before we start opening to other questions, I do want to ask Joanne as the co-chair to, take the floor for a minute and ask anything that maybe I've missed. But I want you to speak to that for a moment.
Yes, yes. So the answer is yes, no. No, there's no identifiers in there. So you would not be able to know. If people are nervous about that identification issue, I would tell them to make sure that they avoid vote by mail, because of course your name is right there on the ballot, and that's a funny little quirk about vote by mail. So with vote by mail, absentee balloting, which is trending heavy, and of course not our favorite because of the obvious security flaws with handing your ballot to a third party mail person and hoping that it arrives safely someday, and then the privacy issues, which are a whole nother conversation. But so to answer your question, the barcode does not obtain anything that could be an identifier. If somebody is really so upset about that privacy issue or the potential and doesn't trust that, they could either go two ways. They could either get into the definition of the barcode issue and study that, or in their jurisdiction, they could remove the barcode and understand that then they are sacrificing a ballot stuffing precaution, a method that could be used. So some of these things are a bit of a trade-off. People that are nervous about barcodes, which we've heard all those arguments for years, then don't have the barcodes, and just understand now you've got to, have other methods to prevent against ballot stuffing. This was our method, and this is our preferred method.
Well, I think it makes sense if it doesn't identify the voter, that everyone would probably feel comfortable with that.
Yeah.
One thing that since you brought up the vote by mail, I'm going to have to go ahead and go here first before I call Joanne to see if she wants to ask anything. But the vote by mail kind of brings into question things that we've been talking about in our small groups. How do you get Americans abroad or the military abroad? How do you get situations which either they're going to have to do vote by mail or online voting? And I know about all the young people and their confidence in online, and other people who don't have confidence in that. So that's kind of a bit of a can of worms, both of those things, but particularly in this case, not the vote by mail, because we're not dealing with that so much, but it's kind of counterpart with the online voting.
Yes. Well, I'm just the same as everybody else. Of course, it's good to be, paranoid, and of course, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean that they're not out to get you. Because I think in this particular space, you can pretty much assume that the bad guys are ever present, and if you allow them an opportunity to manipulate, they're going to seize that opportunity. So I think that's the foundation of the work in this particular space, is you have to know your enemy here and assume that they are doing everything they can to break your system and to manipulate. My feeling about overseas voting is, if they want to mail it, that's a problem. If they want to send it over the internet, they could receive it by internet, probably simply, and then how they send it back is another issue. I think people get a little more concerned about it coming back by internet, more so than it being sent out by internet. That's kind of my feel for what's going on here. That being said, there are some very smart people that think it can be received online as well in a JPEG form with certain security redundancies. Others, don't believe it, but certainly we also know, and here is sort of a bizarre little twist on a lot of this, is that it's been my findings that some of the people that purport to be smarty pants scientists that come up with arguments against some of these more forward thinking procedures actually may in fact have a vested interest in defeating what might be considered solutions to problems, because they in fact are not activists with the best vote counting procedures in their hearts. They actually are pals with the current vendors and prefer the status quo. So what they do is just shoot down anything that comes along that might shake the current status quo, and with their academic CV, they pass statement that, oh, be very afraid of that. And the end result, what we've seen is some solutions that may actually be good solutions have trouble gaining traction, and what we're left with is Diebold, aka Dominion, Sequoia, ES&S. So I would say, when I said know your enemy, that you have to be aware that all is not as it may appear in the game of election systems and activism. So I think I've been fairly out of the closet on my feelings about some of the activists, and of course that's why I'm known as the world's meanest election reform activist.
Well, I do appreciate, your information on this technology. And, I think that we got a little in the weeds with the vote by mail and the online voting, because it, I guess your technology may or may not deal with online voting, but I don't think it does. It really just deals only with voting at the polls, the Prime 3, correct?
Okay, so that's not correct. So,
okay.
So the Prime 3 also handles mail-in absentee balloting in an open source fashion, with the idea being, regardless of how the ballot is received or from where, the foundation remains. There can't be any corporate, any Microsoft, anything anywhere near a voting system.
Okay,
so that was Bernie's point, by the way. When I briefed Bernie on these issues, his camp made the statement, what is Microsoft doing in our elections? That was a Microsoft piece that was in there that wasn't just on the tabulation side. It was actually in some of the transferring pieces. And so that's the idea anyway, is when you have the open source, there can't be any proprietary code anywhere in the chain, because that will infect the rest of the process.
So it certainly gives us a lot more protection, obviously, with the open source, the publicly owned open source, and there is a difference. And then the other thing was, I just want to get more clear. So the Prime 3 actually handles the mail-in ballots, or I guess is that sort of like an online voting kind of thing, or how does it handle that?
No, because it would allow the disability community or the absentee community to receive their ballot, and then they would basically print it out and mail it back in.
Oh, I see. Okay. So it would handle part of that process.
That's right. But it would all be open source. All the surrounding features would be open sourced. And, you know, if we get to the point one day where people think it's good to be able to mail it back online and it's done with a JPEG or whatever, then, you know, we'll deal with that. But right now we feel like we're just trying to stay in rhythm with the feeling of the activist community.
Right. And which of course is, you know, super focused on the security aspects. But again, the redundancy that you've offered us and explained, I think is, I feel personally, you know, a lot more secure. Not that it necessarily solves everything, but it definitely seems to really offer a lot more security. And in our working groups, we're talking about this vote by mail and the early voting and all of that. So if people are interested to help us brainstorm and work on those, please, for now, go to the Facebook group, the Take Back Elections Facebook group, and indicate your interest to help us in those areas. And pretty soon we'll be having our website at the .org. TakeBackElections.org is not quite there yet. But I want to ask Joanne, since she's the co-chair, if she has further questions. You might have been taking some notes or have some questions that you...
Yeah, I do. Can you hear me?
There you are.
Okay, hi. Hi, okay, this is a black and white issue. What does it cost now? I know that was in 2008. It was 10% of the cost. It was $4,000 per precinct, I guess.
400.
So 400. Oh, so do you know about what it would be now, the cost of the machines?
We think that the systems will be, we use the ballpark of 50% of the cost. And then, you know, that's sort of like under promising and over delivering. It may be less than that. We used that 10% figure because that was literal in that moment.
Okay.
The good news is, even though there are costs of transition for these jurisdictions to move in this direction, so they are going to have some pain. They're going from having the vendor take care of everything and just shelling out that money, and now they're going to have to transition. So either they're going to have to be like New Hampshire and hire some people that know how to actually run an election, which it will be a different experience for them, or they're going to have to hire a service company, which is in the open source world really the business model, because you're giving away the blueprint and you're giving away the software code. But now there are companies like Red Hat that provide service to people that are utilizing open source systems. So it changes the landscape of how they're operating. So that's pain for them. But once they get it, the benefit is obviously the less expense, the heightened security, and then they're in a position where they own their own situation, and the technology continues to get less expensive rather than more, because printers and scanners continue to get less expensive as time goes on.
Oh, yeah.
And because of market forces. So you're not locked into a proprietary design, or you know you're in a situation where you're going to one vendor for your hardware and that's what you have to use. Now you've got, you know, choices, which is good.
Okay, this one. This is well, I'm speaking from personal experience, an observation. We've had a new county recorder, and he's had meet and greets with the public, and I've been to most of them. And I've met with him in my coalition, and has met with him, and also the Green Party has met with him about ranked choice voting in the machines. But the get-go, he announced he's going to do vote by mail as an experiment for the next election. Total, with over close to 100 voting centers and 2 weeks, to use those voting centers. Oh, another interesting thing is they're trying to set up a system for text messaging when they're sending out your ballot, when it's received by them, 4 different checkpoints so you can track what's happening to your ballot.
Is that with the vote by mail, Joanne?
Yeah, with the vote by mail. And but the really thing that hit me hard this last meeting was one lady asked, how can we check that our votes are counted accurately? And wow, that's really what we're trying to get down to. But he said there isn't a way to check that. And then I have to say, John Robert Brakey's my friend, and he said, I said, what about that? And he said, well, it's illegal for anybody to be able to have voter identification. And I don't know if that's a state law, but.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the first thing you mentioned was, and we want to talk about them in order, was ranked choice voting, and we're agnostic on that. So we'll put that to the side.
Yeah.
Certainly,
You can't count it.
our
Counted votes.
our systems can handle ranked choice voting. Simply, it's not a difficult situation. And it's funny because I'm seeing some of the people that are chiming in on the chat mention about hand counting still. But however, if I was a technology proponent singularly, I would be a big ranked choice voting fan, because it eliminates hand counting. And so I just want to mention that it is almost impossible to hand count volume areas when you have ranked choice voting. Some people might argue with that, but I don't think they've ever been in an audit with ranked choice voting if they want to. And I know you had a little test the other day, and it showed that. So you can imagine what would happen if you had a real intense situation with ranked choice voting. I think everybody, 99% of people stipulate that it makes hand counting very, very tedious, if not impossible. So that being said, I'm still not anything but agnostic on ranked choice voting. The second part of your question regarding mail-in ballots and voting centers, there was a bill called SB 450 that came out of California, and we saw that bill coming from Colorado, and some people that we call punks with priors, people that are known in the election circles as folks that are not our favorites because they're not always on the righteous side of the road. And they managed to get the politicians in California thinking it was a good idea to go all vote by mail, sort of like Oregon, and then have these things called voting centers. Well, in doing that, what they're doing is closing down precincts. So we have to be very careful from a civil rights perspective at that point. And if you get into that in Arizona, is that where you are, Arizona?
Yeah. Yes.
You want to know then who's deciding what precincts are closed down, and you have to be very sensitive to the communities of color. And
well, that's another thing. He's going to have he's trying to have public transportation available on election day.
Yeah, that's a tough one for the disabilities community. It's a tough one for people.
We're actually going to be working with them.
It's just tough. So taking away precincts that are convenient to the neighborhoods is not our idea of a good time.
Well, they're not you know, I was part of this whole thing. I was acting secretary at one time for Black Lives Matter. So we had a press conference, and Reverend Walton was the first one to talk. He's chair of Black Lives Matter, and told how there's only one precinct in his district, you know, in
Yes.
his, so because, so
this is horrible. This is front-end disenfranchisement. What we've been
Right.
talking about here tonight is basically what we call back-end disenfranchisement, where
Right.
you allow the voter to vote. They think they're having a good time, but in reality, you're twisting their vote in secret. But the front-end disenfranchisement is really easy to spot. That would be closing down of the precincts. You would really want to go after your election officials and ask them, who's going to decide what precincts are eliminated? Why were those chosen? And just so you know, the data that was surrounding the Colorado experiment, shall we say, with this, did not really prove up what they were attempting for it to prove up. And there was a very brave woman that I was in a legislative hearing with that was a statistician, and we were quite proud of her because it was apparent that the politicians and the legislators and the vendors all together on this SB 450 pushing for this program, that they wanted her to say that the statistics proved up that it was all okay for the neighborhoods and the communities of color, and she wouldn't say it. And we could tell that they were trying to prod her to say, to validate their position, and she wouldn't do it. And so that was a one little good moment in that. Okay, so
we're also having community advisory groups throughout.
Yeah.
So this is going to be, he's doing a transition period where he's listening to community.
We're gonna go ahead and open up the conversation because we have maybe 15 or 20 minutes left here.
Joanne, can I just finish to your final point there before we move on? In that Morris Deese from the Southern Poverty Law Center, he is a advocate for our work at the National Association of Voting Officials. He's a good guy for you to talk to on that point. And then finally, when you talk about it being illegal for people to witness how their vote was counted, which is an important point, there is a methodology that we have worked on that we believe solves that piece and will allow for a voter to online access a spreadsheet, and they would have a secret number that was secret to them, and they could see their ballot and that it was counted properly, as could everybody in their precinct, with anonymity. The issue again is that privacy issue of vote selling and such, and so there's a wrestling match going on there that I think the future will address. But just so you know, that would be ideal if we can get past the conversation about privacy, and that a voter would be able to witness their vote to see that there it is, it got counted the way I intended. That's sort of the holy grail, but there's all these surrounding arguments that we're going to have to address moving forward. So I just wanted to answer that.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you, Joanne, and maybe if there's still a wind up here, but I think all these questions are very interesting. I'm sure we're, could probably continue longer than we'd like to here, but I do want to open it up to people who have questions, at least for a little while. And I see if you are able to introduce yourself and ask your question kind of quickly and concisely, and Brent answer quickly, because I want to try to get as many questions as we can here. Someone, if you don't know how to raise your hand and you're actually online, if you kind of go to the bottom of your screen, you'll probably figure that out there. But right now we do have someone with their hand raised, and would you?
Question. Frank Henry.
Well,
I have a question.
Let's see. Okay, Adria, did you unmute Frank Henry?
Yes, Frank Henry.
Okay, well, thank you
The
for being
question
quiet.
I have, may I ask the question?
Please, and then John.
Okay, the question is, you're going, has Prime 3 salesman who's online with us, have you folks actually done a study of a county, we'll say, let's take Maricopa here in Arizona, doing 100% hand count at all precincts and that cost, and then next election come in with the Prime 3, all mechanical, electronic equipment, and which would be more cost effective and meet the 30 full voting rights of each and every voter? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I have to say that I appreciate you recognize me as a salesman because I do own a real estate company, but I've never sold anything to do with voting, but I'd like to. And if we can figure out how I could make that happen, please let me know, especially with this particular system because it's a freebie. But I hope to cash in big time on a service company someday if I live that long with my heart condition. But anyway, enough humor, dark humor. The idea is that something that is free, like what you're talking about, where there is no system and you would be hand counting, that wouldn't really be free because you would have to pay people to do the hand counting. So that turns into an expense. I think it probably would be less expensive to do the hand counting if you could do it properly the first time and it all worked out perfectly. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the experience with hand counting. Usually you do it a few different times and then you realize that it's coming up a different count every time. I know people point to European countries and say, well, it works okay over there. My next question for that is, who told you it was working okay over there? Because the fact is, we know that there are security issues with hand counting. Now, if you have a very small circumstance, let's say, 100 ballots, you could probably get a nice crew together and maybe do it right and maybe not have any shenanigans going on, but you would still not be as secure as the Prime 3 that we demonstrated because you're lacking the redundancies. That being said, I'm not per se against hand counting. We just know it's not happening in the United States and there's no sign that it's going to happen. So that makes some people mad, but that's not our decision. Also, there's disabilities issues within the disabilities community that the Prime 3 addresses that hand counting does not, hand marking does not. So you have to have some system to address the disabilities. Again, if you can convince your local jurisdiction to hand count, at least with the Prime 3, you have a perfectly printed paper ballot, so you don't have a botched election from the get-go. So that's kind of my feeling about hand counting. I think we're spending a lot of time talking about it, and since it's not happening and there's no sign of it happening, it's really a sort of a non-starter.
So, thank you. Excuse me, John has had his hand up for a while. And Adria, do you know how to unmute him? And then who is asking, who's the lady on the call? Could you please say your name? I'm going to let John speak, and then the female voice who wanted to ask a question, love to have you next, right after John.
Hello. I think I'm unmuted. My name's John. I work for a large technology company. I have a couple technical questions, pretty easy.
Make them easy, John. I'm just a little person.
All good. No, I'm not here to cause any problems. What kernel, by the way, may I inquire? You use open source loosely. What kernel?
I'm sorry?
What kernel open source are you?
So Linux has been what the prototype was done with?
What kernel of Linux?
I don't know. You're asking me a question I don't know the answer to. If Brian Fox was on, he would know.
All right. Have you had any considerations towards open source licensing?
Yes, that one I know. And that's General Public License version 3. Again, I'm a layperson, so, and I appreciate being a layperson on this, because if I can't understand it, then maybe we're getting too complex, but I have studied enough to know about the licensing aspects. And according to our Cavo attorney, Larry Rosen, who is, I think, heralded, if you look him up, even though he rejects the term foremost expert, I think he might be. He is a stickler for General Public License version 3. There are some people that have come into the space advocating nouveau licenses like OPL, Open Public License. And the thought was, why do you need a new license when General Public License seems to be ubiquitous is the standard? So that was where we left off, was GPL v3.
Yeah, I don't version 3. That's basically, then you understand that all development comes underneath the original license.
Correct.
Okay. So my final question, thank you very much for entertaining me.
Thank you.
Is penetration testing. This is what I do for a living. You mentioned earlier that machines can't be made secure. I wholeheartedly agree with you and can guarantee you that my entire career is based upon making machines secure. So what penetration testing do you do? Do you have a group that does it? Do you use a tool, SecScan or something?
Yes, again, this would be great if either Brian or Dr. Gilbert was on, because you could chit-chat with them to your heart's delight. However, with the Prime 3, I know that all the university students were hacking, as well as the sophisticated hackers from other universities. So I think there were a lot of academics and then a lot of street hackers that were invited, and they were not successful in getting into the system. Now, not to say that that means it can't be done, but Dr. Gilbert's position is, since he hasn't seen it hacked, he doesn't think it can be hacked, which goes against how I've been trained by the scientists to think that pretty much all systems are hackable, and that then you want to have the open source to spot the hack. But they're very bold in their statements around the Prime 3, saying so far there has not been that situation of it being hackable, so or at least that it hasn't been hacked and up until this moment. And he feels like some of the big time hackers will shy away from the attempt at hacking, because I guess hackers don't like to fail and have it known that they couldn't break a system. So that's Dr. Gilbert's current position on the Prime 3.
John, if you want to join our Facebook group and type in any specific questions, I will be talking to Dr. Gilbert later in the week. I could maybe find out some answers if you have any other questions, those or any others. You could just type your questions in at our Facebook group, Take Back Elections.
Sure. Since it's in the National Vulnerability Database, and I can guarantee you that if you list me your components, I can find them on the National Vulnerability Database. Finding a hacker to prove to you that it's hackable is going to be like finding a needle in a haystack. And so anyways.
No, I'd encourage you to get into conversation with Dr. Gilbert and talk about hacking, because I think we're all on the same team. We want to have that conversation occurring, and I think he'd be glad to speak with you if that's your expertise.
I think you'll find me an asset. Thank you very much.
I'd like to have you around. Just stay in touch with us. You can contact me directly, and I'll put you together with the technical team.
That sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so thank you, John. We have one more person with their hand up, and then we might kind of be able to wrap this up. I think we've learned a lot tonight so far. I don't know who the caller is at 773, but if we can get their line open and ask them to introduce themselves, that'd be great, and ask their question.
Hello? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'm Dr. Laura Chamberlain. We're Who's Counting Chicago. We're the ones that are, we were on Lee Camp and everything for the Chicago election fraud during the primary.
Yes. Hi.
And hi. So we have a very, very strong disability community in Cook County. And we're looking at a whole new system in Cook County this year. They're going to purchase a whole new system. And we're the third largest election division in the country. And so I'm really actively out there shopping. So I have two questions, and that is, for the Prime 3, are there people from your organization that could actually come in and demonstrate this to our election divisions and election supervisors? Is that, it doesn't sound like you're selling this, but is there a team that would come in and demonstrate?
Yes.
That's my first question.
The answer to that is yes, and it wouldn't be me, but it would be either Brian Fox with his good technology chops or Dr. Gilbert himself, and so I know they would be glad to do that.
Okay, great. And then I don't know when or where or anything. I just checking out. Then one of the things that happens in Chicago, Chicago is famous for our election fraud, right? Absolutely. They got this on all over the place here. And one of the things that does happen are people sell their votes. Rahm Emanuel was buying votes for $100 a vote in the last mayoral election. That is a real serious economic stimulus on the south and southwest sides. So are there existing technologies where it would just print a barcode but no number, so that somebody couldn't really copy it? Okay, and if it is illegal right now in Illinois to take a picture of your ballot. So if they couldn't take a picture of the ballot, they couldn't really memorize the barcode, so they couldn't prove that some ballot was theirs. But if there was a number, they could take down the number. That would be easier for them to prove their ballot. And if they proved their ballot, they could get more money for their vote. So tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so the barcode that we're talking about to the human eye is not readable, and there's no number attached. So it's just, you would just see the bars. You would have to hit it with a scanner, an open source scanner, in order to activate the barcode. So it is not, I don't think, prone to vote selling or playing into a vote selling scheme. The barcode, as I mentioned previous, could either be eliminated from the ballot, and then you would have, still a good system, or you could manicure that barcode aspect to your own spec. And these are the kinds of things that I think the jurisdictions are going to find enticing, is that there's nothing necessarily set in stone other than that you have the General Public License version 3 open source software, and you have a perfectly manicured paper ballot. When you get into the intricacies of the barcoding and that would be something that the election officials, with the help of the community, could create to their own spec. And I think that's an advantage that exists with our type of publicly owned system versus just taking what the vendors are selling and being sort of stuck with that. So I hope that answers your question. I don't believe that the current state of our barcoding system is a detriment, but Dr. Gilbert is agnostic about the barcode in general, and I'd let him speak to that for himself, but it won't hurt his feelings if there's no barcode on it. However, with the Deckert design, the initial prototype, that did, as was shown in the video earlier, have the barcode on it.
And one last question, and that is about the handicap, physically disabled community, and that is, do you know any off-the-shelf type ballot printers or ballot creators that really allows the handicap to mark their ballot.
Hey, that's the best question of the night, because that is Dr. Gilbert's forte. That was his starting point with this system, is addressing the disabilities community and making sure that they were accommodated properly. So that's where this work actually came from with Dr. Gilbert. He did, I think, recognize the Deckert design as a good architecture, but what Dr. Gilbert did not only was fine-tune the entire system, but really paid attention to the disabilities components and the voter interface, and that's where he really earned a lot of respect in the community. Not that he didn't have it before, but from the disabilities community in particular, because of his sip and puff work and his work for the blind and the hearing impaired. So that's something I know he takes pride in. So I'm comfortable in stating that I think that's appropriate within the system. And again, we could certainly set up interaction, conference calling, or in-person appearances so that these things could be demonstrated.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Joanne, thank you, Dr. Laura. And Joanne, did you have any further questions? It looks like we're kind of getting through our questions here before we close. Joanne, do you have any additional questions? I'm not seeing her all of a sudden. I think she maybe disappeared. I do want to kind of quickly say one thing. I know we are planning to kind of look at all the systems, but as I expressed earlier, as I learned more about this system and speaking with you, Brent, I felt that there were a lot of positive things about this system, the redundancies, and then of course, always the hand count ballot, and the ballot actually being printed right there. That solves a huge problem with, how do you print these ballots? Where do you store the unmarked ballots? How do you, secure the chain of custody of the ballots from printing, storage to the, election day, and then of course on beyond that. So of course we've looked at all of those things, and hopefully we'll come up with some good solutions, and we think we have a few anyway, but we'll be reporting in future meetings on some of these other aspects. But do you have any, I know just kind of in fairness to having the conversation, do you have any other thoughts on some of the other systems? Because I do know that you mentioned 2 or 3 that could maybe be looked at just for the sake of having a conversation. The STAR system, how would you think it's different and maybe not quite as good as this?
Well, with the STAR system, I think is looking like it's going to be fairly consistent with the Los Angeles, in air quotes, open source system. They're not declaring their open source, first of all, and then the licensing that I think John mentioned a little bit, the licensing, whereas we're talking about general public license version 3, they seem to be running fairly thick with folks that want to create nouveau open source licensing. So we call this open washing, which in the environmental movement, people would be familiar with what's called greenwashing, right. Something that purports to be grassroots or green, but actually upon further inspection is not. Right. So these are twists, business twists that are coming in. So we've got our hackles raised and some red flags surrounding the STAR vote system, the LA system. Not that they can't self-correct and come into the healing light of appropriateness, but until they do, we're going to be watchdogging them, because we call that the Rosie Ruiz factor, where, I don't know if you remember Rosie Ruiz, but she was the marathon runner in New York that jumped in about 2 blocks from the finish line and then proclaimed victory. we always have to be keeping our eyes open and very guarded because there's so much at stake here. And we've seen enough out of these business types to know that unless you really stay heightenedly aware and guarded, that they will try to twist a little piece at the last second and maybe spoil the entire soup. So that's sort of our feeling for a couple other what are being called open source systems. The other one is something out of Humboldt County, which was purported to be an open source system. That was actually by Mitch Trachtenberg, a audit system. And so I think we've been very clear tonight when we're talking about open source voting, we're talking about first count systems. Audits are good, but they should not be confused with getting a proper first count.
Right, and an audit system, of course, is what you were sort of saying, not just the one you mentioned in Humboldt, but also the one that is the John Brakey method, as well as the Ray Lutz. What both of those individuals are doing is more of an audit system. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. So, Joanne, did you have any kind of closing questions? I think we're kind of starting to wind up here.
No.
Probably we're missing some things. We'll let Brent have the last word in a minute. But
Okay. No, and I accidentally left the group. I don't know how that
well, welcome
I
back.
just now rejoined. Thank you. No, this has been great. Just see that we have more options. I'm really amazed and happy to hear all these things.
I know because I've listened in on some other meetings that have talked about some other systems, and I've been listening to, one of them was the STAR system, I believe, and I've heard of at least 3 or 4 others, and I just kept kind of, wondering, and then in speaking with you, I just thought, this I think could maybe be a pretty good thing, and I hear Dr. Laura is interested, and I just, obviously we want to, give everyone a fair hearing here, and we do intend to have some other, conversations clearly, but I think that there's a lot to offer here, and obviously, you've made your point, hand counting isn't happening at the moment, but we do hope that there will be more of it just to kind of get more confidence in our systems and in our process and bring more people into the process because they believe it isn't rigged, So
right.
If you're done, Joanne, I'll let Brent, if you have any closing words.
Yes, I just want to say, we have to acknowledge the work of Alan Deckert with Open Voting Consortium, Dr. Richard Johnson, who has now passed away, who did a lot of work, David Weber, who does great work in the database management voter roll department and has put together the open source movement in that realm. And then, of course, Dr. Juan Gilbert from the University of Florida, the creator of the Prime 3, and also Brian Fox, who is our go-to fellow at Cavo, the fellow that really has done a lot of work with the Open Voting Consortium and pioneering this work, and a very trusted fellow. And all these people are doing it for all the right reasons. And so I just have to thank them, and thanks to all of you for letting me present. And if you ever want to have me back again to sort of come back and discuss any of your other findings, I'm glad to weigh in.
Well, thank you so much, Brent. We really appreciate it. I know everyone here does. And if I don't see anyone else with their hand up, then I guess we can give you a round of applause, or the machines, or all of it, to give everyone who's, been, contributing. And John, your work with, all of these, protections and trying to hack these systems to make sure they're not hackable. So thanks, everybody. And hopefully you'll all be maybe already on Take Back Elections. And if you aren't, please go join up with our group so we can communicate there and stay in touch and keep working to identify and move forward as quickly as we can work through all of this. Some good solutions for basically, yes, saving democracy. And if we can do that here in the U.S., maybe we can, have a big hand in the rest of the globe here. Thanks again, Brent. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And everyone else too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. So that'll conclude our meeting, and thank you all so much. Hi.
Hi. Hi, Manta. I did hand that letter to.
Oh, I forgot to
Jill.
ask you.
Oh,
Yes.
that's all right. I just handed it to her. She was busy, and it was an envelope, and I just passed it over. And there was a lot of talk. I didn't listen in much, but there was some talk about. I wasn't at the workshop, but there was talk about hand counting. So I regret not having gone to that. It was Lynn Serpy who was Jill Stein's campaign manager. So I should have gone to that perhaps. But I did have an interesting, Susan Greenhall had a workshop that was very good on voter integrity. And apparently she has put me onto the working group, the State Audibility Working Group. Is that with Take Back Elections? Is that?
No, you must be in with a different group.
Oh, it must be another group. Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's all I have to.
All right. So whatever you find there, we're wanting to make sure that we collaborate with other organizations and groups. So you might be a nice bridge for us to anyone else, obviously. And if, whatever we're educating on can be helpful to what you would be working on there, what would you be working on? Do you know?
Well, I am not I'm not an expert in any one thing particularly. I'm pretty much of a generalist. But this one fellow that she also met there, Lawrence Glick, I think was his last name, from Chicago. He's really smart. He's got it down well. So this, all of these technical aspects to our voting future, boy, it takes some sharp minds to do that, and some dedicated, focused people. And so I was glad to be put on that working group, and I'll.
Is that with the Green Party or something else?
It may be with the Green Party. I'm not sure.
Because that's where you were at, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And well, I'm just saying that would be a great, you would, like Joanne and a lot of us, we are, parts of other organizations. And I think it's a good way for us to sort of help, introduce what we're doing to other people.
You're all going to be networking here.
Yeah, lots of networking. It's always a good thing. So anyway, that's great. And you can keep us posted. And thanks for the effort to do that and the follow up. And we'll see if it yields anything. And appreciate it.
Maybe she was one of those silent observers tonight.
Did you ask Jill about the $7.5 million, putting some of it, whatever's left, toward election?
No, I noticed that you'd asked that, but I didn't. There were other people that brought up that money, though. That I thought of you then. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I have some thoughts on that, but I'm not going to share them at this point. But yeah, we're going to keep up our work. We're going to do more on the ranked choice voting. It's a really complicated thing to explain and compare to other things. And I think that, it's nice to know that Brent's technology and that what we just listened to tonight does count any of the different methods. And it can count any of them, so that's a good thing. But I know that Linda's here with us, that, she has a lot of interest in that, and others, all of us, we all have a lot of interest in the, way that we cast our vote to how we mark our ballots, So we're going to continue doing work in that area. And I know that we have our next meeting is going to be some reporting on finance, and we might also, if we have time, be able to take a look if it's ready at our new website, and it's looking pretty close to ready. It's looking really good. I had a little bit of a tour before, you know, we got most people joining in on the meeting. So thanks everyone. And
Jeff Creamer is looking forward to hearing from you. Did I give you his email?
no, I don't think so. You'll have to fill me in on that. I can, we're friends now.
He said he hadn't heard from you, the fellow that does the webpage stuff downstairs.
Oh, Jeff, yes. What we can do is, yes, he hasn't. So I will definitely give him a call. We've had a team of 2 web folks working and kind of in little different areas from each other, and so they're a great team. One of them has been really ill for about a week and is feeling better and here with us. That I'm so glad she's feeling a bit better anyway.
He'll be glad to get your call. He says he's looked at some of the stuff you've got already. So.
Oh, he must have gone. He noticed the site, so that's good. Yeah. So Adria, we'll get in touch with him and Kate, and I'm glad he's interested to get in touch with us about that. We do have more. Actually, we have to add on there the different states and. You know, the ballot initiative states, basically, and a map of the states that have ballot initiatives, and then some details there, maybe make some groups for those states to start kind of, you know, gathering momentum in their state to get this passed. But still, that's a bit of a next step because we've got to still work on our language, and our language is going to include some potentially specific things. Certainly it's going to include some protocols that go along with it, but that's why we're working so hard to really sort out both this, you know, technology aspect as well as the voting method too. So those are 2 big areas that we feel like we have to sort out, because obviously people are putting the ranked choice on the ballot, and so we need to figure out if that's the best. We have some concerns because of the hand counting, but, you know, I think that we just have to have the conversation, and if there's something else that people would be comfortable with once we examine it in depth to where we finally get, you know, to that point, maybe we can come up with something. We just know that there's kind of a bit of a move and a tendency to want to go that direction, and we know the reasons behind that. So once we have that whole conversation, we'll see what we come up with at the end of all that conversation. But I just had, as I said earlier, I had heard in depth and listened to presentations. They weren't visual, and of course we only had a small bit of ours that was visual, but I've heard presentations on other systems, and quite honestly I haven't really found anything I thought had, you know, the positives that I've heard tonight and kind of knew and before and wanted to present to everyone. So thank you guys for being on the call, and George, thanks for you know, delivering our letter. We'll see if we hear anything, and I haven't heard, and I will make sure our web people get in touch with Jeff. You tell him we will be in touch.
So you were in touch with a presidential candidate, and tonight you've upstaged the president.
Well, listen, George, you've been very helpful in all of this effort. So, you know, a lot of this we can thank you for. So, and everyone here, everyone's contributing in their own way. And as long as we just, you know, respect one another and move forward in a positive way and stay focused on the work, you know, we can do some things that are going to be good for everyone. I think we're all sincerely trying to do that. So we just have to have a little patience with each other. So thank you so much.
Thank you all. Good night.
All right. Good night. And we didn't want to keep you up too late on the East Coast.
Okay.
We know it's getting late.
Okay, are we done? Yeah, I'm starting.
Yeah, we're done. Sign us off anytime.
Okay, thanks.
And thank you so much, man. That what you've done on that website, you know, is really great. And Kate, the logo is really nice. We've made some business cards that I'm going to finish that up tomorrow. It just got too compressed today, and I couldn't deal with it. I had to deal with the meeting. So it
You
had to
feeling
go.
any better, Kate?
Yeah, I am. It's little by little. It's, I still cough when I talk, you know, it's like this tickle. Anyway, it's been great that I've been able to work from home. So I haven't been, you know, I haven't been completely out of work.
I added a bunch of stuff to the website. I don't know if you had a chance to check it out.
I haven't today. I think I looked at it yesterday. It's looking good.
Yeah, check it out. I added a bunch of stuff today.
Oh, cool.
You're doing a great job. And I think it sounds like Jeff wants to kind of work with you. And, you know, maybe we get a few more good ideas or a little help or something, you know, just to have a little bit of a bigger, stronger team wouldn't hurt, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do that. I'll send you the corrected phone number because I did tell you that I tried to call him once and it wasn't working. And then George got me the corrected phone number. So I will get that to you. And Kate, I haven't sort of bothered you with it because I knew you weren't well. So I'm just kind of letting Adria reach out to Jeff. And
You're talking about corrected phone number?
for the guy who would like to help us with the website.
Oh, I see.
Oh, Kate, though, when you're feeling better, we also do need to have you talk to whoever you got the domain name through to point the www one at the site.
On that, and I haven't been able to do it.
And also the email address.
So on how to do it, I just haven't done it yet.
Okay. I just reminder.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go, guys. It was a really good meeting.
No pressure. Yeah, it was a good meeting. Thanks a lot, everyone.
It was really good. I'm
Talk to you later. I'll give you a call, Kate.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm trying to